All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for
Assassination Classroom, Season 2, Episode 13. Koro-sensei versus the principal.
Principal.
Who will come out on top.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Asano's father. And,
Indeed.
And we are in a situation where Koro-sensei is taking hits from
grenades
inside of textbooks with specific problems that he has to solve in a specific, almost near random order so that he can make sure that the live anti-personnel grenade goes off to hit the teacher, to hit the principal, but that doesn't seem like Koro-sensei style.
Right, we've never actually seen Koro-sensei kill somebody, so...
Yeah, this seems dangerously, I don't know.
But they need to protect the E-class, you know?
I mean,
the
that's
building.
just a building, man.
Yeah, but they don't want them to get
E-class
sent
is
off.
not a building.
But they can't get sent off to the prison camp school, you know?
I know. But still, there's a couple things in Koro-sensei's just general character that don't seem to fit with this puzzle going the way that the principal suggests it to. Well, if anything, Koro-sensei is going to have to think outside the box here and figure out a way to game it so that he still wins.
Or maybe just maybe, what would be a bigger obstacle than somehow teaching the principal? I don't think that's necessarily going to happen.
Saving Asano.
But if it did, saving Asano. Yeah, that's a good one.
And even if it's a thing of where he's like, I'm going to send you to the prison school and stuff like that, it's then Asano's like, well, fine, I'm going with them. And he's like, no, son, you stay.
Hold on.
And he's like, no, I don't.
Yeah, we'll have to see how this goes, but yeah.
So, y'all, without further ado, let's get into it.
開いて解いて終わりました。この問題集シリーズ、ほぼほぼどのページにどの問題があるのか覚えています。
Cool.
The way he wins is too fast.
Because he cares so much and remembers.
Oh. Japan's workbooks! Wait, what?
Not just this curriculum, but...
Are you a passionate educator?
Yeah.
Principal.
Wow.
Wow. Whoa, Koro-sensei.
死の直前に垣間見る走馬灯、その完璧な脳裏に何が映っているのでしょうか。
Flashback.
先生。
Ooh, yeah.
Asano sensei.
Whoa, wait.
Back when he used to be a teacher?
Was he the teacher for Class E though? Because that's the building there.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
If he was the teacher for Class E.
Oh, that's interesting.
Whoa.
Huh.
池田君、今日も私を倒せなかったね。さあ、約束だ。今日もいい子で勉強しようか。
Oh. Okay.
相変わらず化け物だな、佐野先生は。
世の中に無駄なんてないんだよ、長井君。
Is this how the school started?
Whoa.
この山道はうってつけだろ。
お金はこの塾赤字でしょ？
心配ないよ、森さん。赤字分は株式投資で。
Okay.
Oh, just his own money.
Yeah.
そこまでして俺らをどう育てたいんだよ。
簡単だよ。いい生徒に育ってくれればいい。
What is this
The whiplash is real.
Yeah.
俺、バスケ選手になるんだもん。勉強ばっかしてるやつの気が知れねえ。
池田君、いい夢だ。じゃあ私と。
Wow. Okay.
勝負しようか。
勝てるわけねえじゃん、完璧超人に。
まあね、まだ君には備わってない実力を私は持っている。同じように君のいいところを誰しもが持っているわけじゃない。
Nice.
Wow. Yeah, respect your own strength. Yeah, and respect others because they could have something that you don't.
それぞれをケアして、将来社会で遺憾なく長所を発揮できる人材を育てる。
Well,
私は全力で考えて授業に当たった。
Where does everything just
fall apart?
Does he have a son and then everything starts to switch up a little bit?
Yeah, or he ends up getting more students and then he can't focus on them.
クネギの葉っぱ型のネクタイ
Oh!
Wait,
Yeah!
I think
I think he still has that.
I think he
right?
might.
Yeah.
確かに
え
昨日も700万
Wow.
それを言っちゃうからこの先生は
けど嬉しいよ
みんな志望の中学に入れたし、
全部浅野先生のおかげだよ
Wow.
大人になったらいいやつになって会いに来るよ。
Okay.
どうした急に
ああ、別に元気してるかと思ってさ。
私は相変わらずさ君の方こそやんちゃで迷惑かけてないかい
なわけねえだろ。教え通り思いやりの塊になったっつうの。
Okay.
This is adorable.
投資の金でうまい飯でもおごってよ。じゃあ
What?
No way. He died?
自殺ですって
You're kidding me.
場にたちが悪いのがいたらしくって暴力
Holy crap!
Shit.
So was he going to be asking for help then?
Maybe.
Like he was calling almost
Well-
out to be like, hey.
一体何を教えてきたんだ
And he's gonna think I didn't teach him to be properly, like, strong.
3年で死ぬ
You know.
いい生徒だったと言えるのか
Wow.
強い生徒に育てなければ何の意味もなかったんだ
And just like that, the whole philosophy changes.
あらゆる強さを学び尽くした私の生徒を殺した男たちは言葉巧みにギャンブル中毒の廃人へと導い
Wow. Holy crap.
た私の弱さの象徴だったあの校舎は弱者への
Was
見せしめの
abandoned.
場所にした
Well,
Wow.
この校舎から離れるのは寂しいけど私たちはコロ先生についていきます
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
どこかの山奥にこもってでも
Oh, of course he's crying.
暗
Oh.
殺教室を続けます。
Okay.
コロ先生
ん？
私の教育論ではねあなたがもし地球を滅ぼすならそれでもいいんですよ地球がなくなれば結末は全員平等に訪れる
Wow.
私の生徒だけが不利益を被ることもないそれは私の教育の一つの理想だ
No.
And then
way.
Koro Sensei uses his skin, saves him from the explosion. Yeah.
ねる
Yep.
Wow. Yeah.
私の脱皮をお忘れですか？
なぜそれを自分に使わなかった
あなた用に温存しました。私が勝て
Wow.
ばあなたは間違いなく自爆を選ぶでしょうから。
私の行動が断言できる
似た者同士だからです。
Oh, that's great.
お互いに意地っ張りで教育バカ。自分の命を使ってでも教育の完成を目指す。
Wow.
テストの間に昔のあなたの塾の生徒に聞いてきました。
No way.
あなたの教師像や起こったことも。
Oh, and
覚えた
Wow.
教育の理想は十数年前のあなたの教育とそっくりでした。私があなたと比べて恵まれているのは
wow.
この E 組があった
Oh,
I had the
okay.
best class, and that's
同じ
right.
境遇を共有してるから試練にも団結して耐えられる。
Okay.
溜め込まず相談できる。そして理事長、
oh.
この E 組を作り出したのは
That's
で
true.
もない。
That's
あなた
true.
なのですよ。結局あなたは昔描いた理想の教育を無意識に続けていたんです。ナイフ
Wow.
で殺せるのは私だけ。人間の命を奪えと教えるわけがない。
Yeah.
私もあなたも理想は同じです。
一日に一度いつでも先生を攻撃していい
Wow.
Uh
当て
huh.
られたらその日の授業はサボってもいいよ
Wait.
約束できんの？
ああ
最後までやり通せよ、浅野先生。途中で逃げんのはなしだかんな。
It's kind of like an assassination.
Yep.
私の教育は常に正しいこの10年余りで強い生徒を数多く輩出してきたですがあなたも今私のシステムを認めたわけですし温情を持ってこ
Yep.
の E 組は存続させることで
Awesome.
Yeah.
The way he's
Right
actually
there.
pressing the knife against it.
認めませんね。
たまには私もやりに来ていいですかね
もち
Oh.
ろんです。公的種にはナイフが似合う。
Okay. He's acknowledging that he's the student now too.
君がどんなに成長しても 永久に私には勝てはしない。
なぜそう言い切れます？
私も成長を続けるからだ。
And as a father?
親として。
Okay. All right.
I mean,
Well,
got a long way to go, buddy.
he does.
On especially the parent front.
先生の決定的弱点を教えてあげる約束でしたね。
You.
You.
All of you.
先生、意外とパワーがないんです。スピードに特化しすぎていて、
Oh.
特に静止状態だと触手一本なら人間一人でも抑えられる。
Okay.
Oh,
つまりみんなで触手をすべて抑えれば先生の動きを止められる。
それができたら最初から苦労してねえよ。可能なの分かってて教えただろ。バカ。ダメですかね。あの量はヌタウナギをつかむ感覚です。
All right. All right. Yes.
wait, whoa.
Yes.
Whoa.
主役やり
No. No.
先生劇のジャックとか一度やってみたかったし、皆さんといつも
But you're already one of the leads in an anime.
Yeah.
書いてあげる。強敵やら暗殺仲間の望みを叶える。
Oh no.
よし。
Oh no.
So you have to die in the play, Kono Sensei.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Uh-huh.
please.
桃です。電波エコーで測定しました。
Radiography?
これ
What?
の中で胎児が育っているようなの。
Oh, this is
とんだ珍品だぞ。
This is kinda
見が飛びつかないわけがね
freaky.
見せ物にすりゃ俺は一生大金持ちだ。
Wait.
婚届です。子供の人権を無視するようなおじいさんの非道な言葉。俺たちではなく。
Wow.
俺という言葉
Wow.
おばあさんの心は今決まりました。弁護士です。
Lawyers! Ah!
様の代理人を務めます。以後の話
What's even happening?
This is so
桃の
intense.
件ですが、婚姻関係は当の昔に破綻して、
Ah,
財産分与の基準日はもう過ぎたと考えられる。
long
モラ
past.
ハラの慰謝料を含むと桃一つでは足りませんよ。
生活費もずいぶん前から入れておらず。
Oh, this is
証拠も全て揃ってい
depressing.
ます。
Yeah.
Oh my
おじい
god.
さんに裁判で勝ち目はありません
The
でした。
posed pictures with the bitch sensei.
動画を
Hey.
あの男たちは警察に連れて行かれました。鬼が宿るのでしょうか。
言葉ってのはね、爪痕残してなんぼなのよ。
主役
He's the lead! Yeah!
どこまでもいい国は。
結局私の学校は一匹の怪物にまんまと手入れをされてしまう。
What?
だがあの E 組はこの劇のように平穏無事に終幕しない。かつてなく大きな嵐が過ぎた後であなたはまだ教師でいられますか？
The biggest storm ever.
I see. Surprise principal backstory. Like,
Surprise! Sudden principal backstory at the moment before he was going to die.
yep.
All right. I did not expect it to be like so just, I'm about to die. Backstory. I'm about to die. And then, of course, he's saved by Kono
Right.
Sensei. There's no
Yeah.
way Kono Sensei would let him die.
I gotta say though,
Yeah.
what was that play? Like,
That play?
like
Yeah.
because
I'm just like,
like I had a feeling that they, things were going to be interesting once they asked what's her name to do the writing, but like, oh man,
wow. Okay.
yes,
Principal backstory. And he was a great educator.
yes, he was.
He was a fantastic principal, teacher, and just overall just mentor to these students. And one bit of fear.
Right. Yeah, one bad day, one thing where it's like, oh shoot, I must have messed up.
Yeah, and bearing all the responsibility on himself, yeah.
By the way, guys, if I make weird faces, I have been sneezing a lot, so just bear with that. But
Okay.
this was something where in the show, like I don't know about you, but the principal was always that thing where it's like, okay, he's so over the top, he's so evil, he's so awful with everything, with how he's in the show and everything, how he treats the students.
Yeah.
He would be the ultimate insurmountable, like, task for Koro Sensei to somehow reach his heart, right?
Right.
But there's no way that could ever work, right? Mm-hmm. And while this is definitely in sort of a similar situation to Nagisa's mother, I feel like,
where it doesn't
make up for the things that they did, know, but it is something where it's they're trying to change now, or, well, I don't know if I'd even necessarily say that for the principal.
No,
but
they've just gotten some new perspective. I think that's the biggest thing we can guarantee right here.
They've been taught. Yeah.
They've been taught, yes. The question is whether they will continue that lesson and its corresponding virtues into the future. But I would say I'd have more hope for him than I do for Nagisa's mom, personally.
Yes, because he's going to be successful at pretty much whatever he sets his mind to, for the most part. So it's the question of, is he going to set his mind to the right thing, not is he actually going to be successful.
Yeah. And the idea also of him being superhuman being his weakness, I really liked that, because when it comes down to it, the reason why he saw this whole thing as being something where his teaching methods were obviously what was at fault here, and he failed this student, was because he cared so much about them. And because he cared so much about them, he devoted all of his energy into making sure that they were, brought up in a good way as good students, as he called it.
Yeah.
And good has different meanings and perspectives because it's a very ambivalent, or not ambivalent, a very ambiguous word. And in this instance here, a kid committing suicide because of school bullying in a place where you weren't the person involved really with anything, you can't blame yourself for that, buddy.
No,
like you really can't. That is one of the roughest things in a family dynamic, where I've seen people who are my friends have their siblings like commit suicide, especially when it's like the older siblings or something like that, where they are the ones that like
were sort of the leader.
They were everyone was looking up to them. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, from their perspective at the very least, suddenly they're just gone,
and it destroys them.
It destroys them. Yeah, it is extremely brutal to go into as a topic, but to have it be a thing here where an educator sees this, I've never heard about that perspective, because a lot of suicides in this area do happen. I would say closely connected to sometimes the school environment. Like this is not an uncommon thing. It's more of a common thing with regards to, when kids commit suicide and stuff. It's almost always coming
pressures
from
and demands and things like that are nasty, and
just bullying. Just bullying in general can be ridiculously nasty.
And one of the things that I like that they brought up here is that because there were only the 3 kids and they all went to like different schools and things like that, there wasn't as much of a feeling that they had people that they could turn to and really depend on, or at least the kid that killed himself didn't, or must not have, right? And so when he ended up actually like contacting the teacher and being like, hey, let's hang out, and he's like, yeah, I've got some work that's going to take me over there, and I'll, we can get dinner. It'll be great. Turns out that wasn't soon enough, right? And it's something where anytime suicide is brought up in a story, I'm always very curious to see how they handle it, because it's a big topic.
It's a heavy topic.
It's a heavy topic. Like
not to make light of it, but like the drama play. What the heck? That's really heavy.
Right. So it's if you bring that up,
follow through with it.
Treat it respectfully, follow through with it, and have a good reason for it, right? And one of the things that I feel like is not as often gone into in stories is not the suicide itself, but the effect it has on other people, right? Now, in this situation, the principal is very extreme character, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it makes sense that also his responses to things would be extreme. But when people say that like that destroys people, right? It can't really be fully it can't be understated. It can't fully be understood unless it's experienced, and you would never want that to ever happen, right? So it's the
I have personal experience with people whose siblings committed suicide, and it's and it shatters. It shatters it shatters basically the idea of like there's certain unspoken rules with regards to like what you expect to happen in your like everyday life. And I think Nagisa's example is a very, very good kind of comparison here, is that when you have a parent, the child is at the mercy of the parent for a very large portion of its childhood.
Right.
And
that's the whole point of growing up and becoming independent.
Exactly. It's the relationship in a more wholesome, emotional way of educator and student in a lot of ways.
Sure.
And it's not based on some kind of hard role where you can never be friends or anything like that. It is in some ways kind of like what Koro Sensei is to Class E. He is a father, if you will, to them in a unique kind of way. But Nagisa's mom violated that code of conduct, that trust, basically, by abusing Nagisa, not just verbally, but emotionally and like mentally, and going in and breaking down who Nagisa was, so that she could have the child that she wanted, or that could fulfill a certain image of herself and all that.
Sure.
In this instance here, we have a teacher who initially sees an ideal image, in some ways, well, kind of within himself, of what makes an amazing human being. And he's honed himself in this way, so he is a little bit of a caricature in that regard. He's just,
totally.
I'm just perfect. And it's like, that's a funny joke and stuff, and that shows how he becomes perfectly, antagonistic, he's
Totally.
Yeah.
And,
I was still going with this, But when he has something that's within his kind of a dynamic here, where a student of his, someone who's young, someone who has all this opportunities, full of life, is innocent, and then gets thrown out into the dangerous world from his perspective, and gets eaten up and torn apart so quickly that he, just heard from him like a day or two before, and is like,
What happened? Where did I go wrong?
He's like, my perfectness or what have you could not have stopped this. So there must be something wrong that I've come to. And he just like snaps and turns a gear, and everything goes off there. And I don't blame anyone except the nondescript, bullies in this instance here. But even then, the fact that he turned this all into now I will utilize brainwashing techniques to get revenge on those
which
kids.
I believe we saw them later, still as adults. And
Jacob brought this up,
because it was when he stops the car or whatever and goes out to the
2 episodes ago,
to the one guy who's like homeless or something. He's on a park bench, I think, and he throws him the money and is like, get some of your favorite, spend that gambling or on drugs or something like that. I taught you this and all that stuff. It felt very out of place to me, because it seemed like something where it's just this is a random person. This is what I do to random people.
Except
as
he
just
said
a
that
societal
I taught
thing.
you that. So
right.
Seemed random at the time.
Well, okay.
It
It seemed impersonal, that there was, to me, that it didn't have anything to do with this particular person, but that's just something that apparently he does, because he has very particular ideas and philosophies of how he wants society to function, and there must always be the heel, the whatever, right?
Right. Yeah.
Turns out, no. It was a specific, focused act of revenge, right?
Yeah.
And
it's been followed up on for a decade or more.
Right?
Probably close to almost 2 decades.
Yep. And that's all kinds of messed up.
That is all kinds of screwed up. Yeah.
It's
Like here's the part here that's I feel like where a lot of the depth from this episode comes in, is that for whatever reason, the show is slightly reinforcing the principal's actual teaching method here. Is that in order to foster the perfect students, you need to be the perfect educator. But in order to be the perfect educator, you need to adjust yourself to the students.
Sure.
But in order to do that, you have to have students. And what Koro Sensei does at the end kind of rounds out the picture and balances out a little bit and says that, hey, I'm like, I kind of followed after your stuff that you did from, actually, no, he said how long ago it was. He said, Kodo-sensei said how long ago it was. He said it was like 10 or 12 years ago or something like that. So we know actually how long ago it was. Okay. But then he's saying, but I had this class. Like, the reason why I can be such a great educator here is not because it's not just me.
Yeah.
It's because of my students. They are the ones that allowed me to basically be this person for them.
And that's the wonderful bit of Kodo-sensei's story, is that it's not about him being perfect. It's about this is his learning experience as well, right? That's why he's coming here. He has all these things that he can share, but they're teaching him as much, if not more, than he's teaching them.
Yeah, he's still a student in that regard.
And that's why I love that the principal ends up basically being like, hey, mind if I try and assassinate you every once in a while? Because it's the acknowledgement that I'm not actually superhuman, or I'm not perfect, right? I may be superhuman in certain aspects. Reality is stranger than fiction, though. And while the principal is definitely an amalgamation of a bunch of insanely crazy and unrealistic character traits and abilities and things like that, there are people out there that are just ridiculously good at certain things, right? And it can be very easy for them to then think that they're somehow fundamentally different, infallible, whatever, etc. And there's that disillusionment that can happen when they either realize that they are very much fallible, or also if you have people who are studying underneath someone like that. That's a common thing that happens with children, where you think the parent or the teacher or whoever is perfect because they're so much further beyond you in some particular area, and then you realize no, they actually have weaknesses and points that they don't quite measure up on too, right? And then that's when you can hopefully learn to basically do things different so that you don't just become a carbon copy. So I really like how they kind of handled that with the principal there, because he still has a hell of a long way to go, right? And he still has a lot of his sort of pride and arrogance and my teaching way is the best, and not being willing to admit defeat and things like that. But that acknowledgement, that willingness that I can still learn and I still will be, that goes a long way.
It does.
Because there are few things worse than someone who is just convinced and will not allow anyone to tell them otherwise, but thinking just that they know everything, that there's nothing they can learn, Because what do you do with that?
I want to throw out a very weird extra thing.
Okay.
One of the things that I've been kind of just waiting for in general in this just overall just anime is for them to just get into more stuff regarding Kodo-sensei.
Oh yeah, just directly drop the pretense,
be like, let's understand him a little bit more. What's his story? I want to go out on a weird limb here and say that this kid that committed suicide actually kind of gave me some vibes that he could be Kodo-sensei. Now, I know this is a little bit of a leap here.
Just a bit.
No, but hear me out here,
okay.
Right? What is Kodo-sensei? Some kind of human
that
was turned into this, right? Right? Okay. Do you think that Kodo-sensei was turned into this when he was an adult or when he was a kid? I would say that he'd be probably a lot like Itana, and he was probably turned into this more as a kid. So
I'm not sure. Given, I think he was at the very least I think he would be technically an adult, but he could have been very early 20s. Kind of situation.
Yeah, totally. I just want to say that I think that Kodo-sensei gives me kind of, at times, that young pervert kind of vibes where he's like the, Onizuka, basically.
Right.
Where he's surprisingly young, basically.
Right.
And this backstory, just from my meta perspective here, felt very...
Pointed?
Very, no. Just that it felt very over the top for the principal.
Totally.
If it's just for the principal, I'm like, all right, cool. But I don't know. Just with the way that this story has been going, it feels like a bit more than what's necessary. And it was the moment when he basically set up an assassination classroom for this one kid.
Oh,
who basically then ends up
doing
leaving.
that with students back at the same building and everything.
Well, that's what the theory would be. Yeah, is that it's very similar to that. But the poetry of it could be that now the principal is asking Koro Sensei, can I...
Right. Yes, even
can
if...
I come over to try and kill you every once in a while?
Right.
But then there was also this line here where right at the point when they have their little flashback bit where he's like saying like, oh, how about this? How about we give you one chance per day to land a hit on me whenever you like, and if you do, you can skip, class that day.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, that's great. Seriously, promise? And he's like, yep. And he says, you gotta see it through to the end. Asano Sensei, no running off halfway. And seeing it through to the end, it's now his reminder of like, okay, I've got to stick with this all the way. My philosophy is always correct. I've turned out a great number of strong students these past dozen years. So yeah, the dozen years is how much time it's been. It's like, but now you've acknowledged my system as well. So that feels a little bit like I thought back on this kid kind of acknowledging this. You're acknowledging this. So I will permit this E-class to remain. Looks at this. Then while looking at this, then we show Koro Sensei potentially looking at it.
And chuckling. Okay.
Still can't simply admit defeat, I see. This could be something where he's referencing back to just earlier in the encounter here, where he's saying this, you couldn't admit defeat.
Or
but
earlier
it could
in
also
the series.
What it could also be, still can't simply admit defeat back then. Now, this is super big of a reach and stuff like that.
My mind is stretching to try and track with this, but let's go through the things that could potentially, at the very least, make the connection, because regardless of whether Koro Sensei actually is that kid or not, right? I find it hard to believe that Koro Sensei, if he was that kid, he wouldn't tell the principal when he cared that much about him and all that stuff that, oh no, I didn't actually commit suicide. I was taken into some
put into some government
program or something like that, right? And if the show wanted to do this could be a way to basically cleverly give Koro Sensei backstory before they actually get to the Koro Sensei focus, because once they get to the Koro Sensei focus, you know that the show is probably going to end soon, right?
Yeah.
Because that destroys, you can't keep the assassination classroom while keeping that, right?
Yeah.
Like it kind of tends to fall apart, because then Koro Sensei won't destroy the world. But either way, thematically, this is a repeat, right?
Yes.
So regardless, the similarities are worth looking
thematically.
at. Yes, right. And one of the things that I also want to point out is that when Koro Sensei gave him the knife, right, he then takes it and he doesn't just tap it against the little oak leaf or whatever thing, the pin. He actually presses it down against it. You see the tip of the rubber knife actually start to bend. What I picked that up as is that he's basically saying, you got me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Not necessarily Koro Sensei, right?
Right.
But the idea of, the kid back then, right? Because that could also have been a test. You landed the hit, right?
Oh, yes.
So I will admit defeat here. I will admit that there were still some things that I could learn, because in a lot of ways, him doing that with the kid was basically saying, hey, if you can prove that that you can teach me something, then cool. You did the teacher job for a bit.
You don't need to be a student.
You don't need to be a student today, right?
Yeah.
And that's great. Like that's the kind of thing that I almost like when I end up having kids someday. I want, not specifically try and stab me when but like, hey, if I try and engage their thinking and their own thought processes and things like that, so that way if they end up basically showing that they understood something or even teach me something, then it's good job. Reward it, right?
Yeah.
So, regardless, I really love the image of him actually taking the knife and pressing it to that, because it's I don't know. It's just visual poetry. I love it.
Yeah, I also think that there's something potentially here because he's accepting this, and maybe maybe on some level he's already been briefed, like he already knows. He knows that this kid is.
Oh, if it is that,
Yeah, and it's not about whether or not it's the case that he knows. It's just the thing of, well, I still ended up going this path, and it rewarded me with all of this accolades and success.
So
and
I'm
all
not
this
going
stuff.
to change.
So why would I change that?
Right.
The idea of what that kid represented still, still focused and honed me on this dark path. Yeah, he wouldn't change it just because maybe he got a government report of this is what we're going to be putting in your E-class.
Right, if he's built up a new habit, then he might think, this is still worth it.
Yeah, and also, let's just go back to episode 1. Why would he want to teach the E-class?
Who, Koro-sensei?
Koro-sensei, yeah.
Oh, yeah, well, the person in his backstory specifically said teach those kids.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Right, yeah. but why the kids in the E-class? Why not kids in any other school ever? It's because he has some personal connection to this place here in some way.
Sure.
So I almost have been waiting for something like this where we get E-class backstory.
Right.
Because I almost assumed on some level that there would be some kind of Koro-sensei related thing to it, but since it's the principal, I'm like, I thought it would be backstory on the main campus, stuff with regards to how he built it from the ground up, and he's like, I am the Ubermensch, and it's really dark kind of stuff, and I'm like, no, we went the wholesome route and went where he was actually originally building just the class up in the mountains to,
crazy idea.
Yeah.
What if you're 80% right?
Okay.
And that's what this is, except that student isn't actually Koro-sensei.
Okay, cool.
Let's say the student did kill himself. Koro-sensei was the other boy in the class, and then the girl from his backstory was the other girl in the class.
Oh, shoot.
And so that's the situation. Okay. There's something that they all experienced together of this friend of ours, this close friend of ours killed themselves, right?
Yeah,
and that destroys us, right?
Totally. But then, I'm tracking here.
After that, something happens, whatever, Koro-sensei gets in this situation, and given the fact that he said, I talked to the other people, that could totally be a cover. It could be what actually happened. But then that would make sense for why, because you need both people to have connections to Class E. Not just Koro-sensei, but also the girl, right? Because if he wasn't familiar and she was, then he might do it as a favor for her,
Sure.
But she would only say that if he knew. Oh, you're going back to.
I'm going back to episode 1. I want to see what the girl,
what she actually looked like
and sounded like, and
yeah, because we didn't get. Well, it might be a different voice actor, so that might not necessarily give us anything.
It doesn't
but
necessarily. They wouldn't do that to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's.
Oh, this is. Hold on, let me switch it to
sub.
Dub. I mean, sorry, sub. Yeah, it's right now in dub.
But yeah. One of the other things that I just want to say though is because I touched on the whole idea of the way that the effect that suicide has on people around you, right? That's. There's a good chance that the boy knew that it would have that kind of or a crazy effect on the principal. Not necessarily like that, right? But that, he really cared about him. So, it's not just like he would, take it on the shoulder, right?
Sure. There's nothing I can immediately tell from episode 1, really.
Okay. But there is no way that he would have thought that it would result in all of this. Everything that happened after that, right?
Oh,
because he probably would have thought, no, but our teacher is superhuman, right? He makes millions of yen in a day or whatever, or in a week, just doing stocks with the money and all that stuff. He's absolutely untouchable, right? But no, he wasn't, right? And the effects of that one action ended up being felt a dozen years later by people that never knew this kid. Right? Wow. All of so much stuff just because of This one thing.
Yeah, it really does fit.
It's spread.
Yeah, it does fit in the thematic sense, but it also it would just work so well in the poetry of it if we had some kind of connection to Koro Sensei from that stuff, just because of how much influence it's had on
the principal
this.
and by that by extension the whole school.
And in some ways they could even have some angle going on with this where the students or just the student feeling like once he like learned what happened with Asano, the principal, that he's like, oh no, like my absence, my everything like that, like was instrumental in a lot of this stuff happening.
Yeah,
there be some heavy stuff too.
There would be an extra sense of responsibility over this class in particular because, because
they wouldn't exist in this method if not for the fact that this teacher then ended up going on this dark path of brainwashing students and people in order to fulfill some kind of goal of making people strong.
Right.
Like, ugh.
And
yeah.
And yet this could also be, an extremely tragic backstory as a way to basically show that, how to give a sympathetic perspective on the principle of
how
back
a human
when he was
becomes
wholesome,
a monster.
How a human becomes a monster, right?
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
And how even the greatest, even the people that seem untouchable, right?
Yeah.
Can still fall. And the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
And
right?
thus there's a parallel there to Koro Sensei as well, given that they see him right now as the perfect teacher.
Exactly.
They
haven't seen him as the
there's a Koro Sensei from before that was not like this.
That was going to destroy the world.
Yeah, that hadn't met Class E yet.
Exactly.
So it works on that level as well.
Yep.
So it's good to keep all that in balance.
I did not expect you to be like, what if the kid was actually Koro Sensei? Like that threw me for a loop.
Well, like it's something that my brain is just wired to. Anytime there's a mystery element in a story, my brain's like jumping at every red herring and every little thing to be like, is there anything? Is this noodle go somewhere? And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm still pulling.
Yeah.
And usually if I'm still pulling after about 3 seconds, that means in my head I'm like,
there's
I'm onto something.
Right.
But even though that doesn't necessarily mean that at all.
I do like the idea though of this being a way to tie in some connection to Koro Sensei's backstory and his connection to Class E because, without that, what is the tie-in?
Well,
unless it's just
there's been other things in some ways, not really the past few episodes, but the past few, not really arcs, but little elements of the story where they kind of go, hey, little seasoned Koro Sensei, little stuff there, and none of it in my mind ever feels like something I can really pull on and get something good out of. It's more
extra
of
flavoring,
or flavoring that makes more sense under certain contexts.
Sure.
And I just, for the life of me, I can't figure out what the context would be.
Well, and also there's just the fact that since we've basically wrapped up the whole thing with the school now, there might be more stuff with the school, but
finals, principal.
Finals, principal.
Yeah.
The son,
this might be
basically
the
all taken
end
care of.
The school kind of portion of the story. And given that there's a big storm coming.
Whatever that means. Yeah.
Well, we know at the very least it means something with the government having something special that they've been building or prepping up.
Right.
And that's on its way, basically.
Yeah. But since we're in the second half of this final season, it's like now we're in the mode of sort of expecting all the government stuff, all the Koro Sensei stuff, because that does need to happen at some point. Like there is. There just has to come a point where it's now we're in the Koro Sensei arc. Now we're gonna see how the class is taught Koro Sensei. Yeah,
that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
So, y'all, thank you so much for watching this episode's reaction and discussion. If you want to see the next episode's reaction and discussion right now, though, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get on early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there, and all this comes with Discord access. You can chat with us and the community there about this show, about anime in general, and also be sure to check out our Twitch channel.
Yes, we stream every weekday. The info's in the description.
Yes, if any of that interests you, we'll see it there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.